A £6 billion package for the NHS, but will it be enough to beat the backlog? Ministers say the cash prescription expected in this week's budget will get health services back on track after the pandemic, but critics say it'll fall short.
More scans and tests and checkups being done, investment into beds and surgical hubs, and also investment in IT, so freeing up the time of our dedicated NHS workers.
Also this lunchtime, the living wage set to go up to £9.50 an hour. I'm a Celebrity star Adele Roberts reveals she's having surgery for bowel cancer. So what are the symptoms and how can you get checked? Plus...
What's my last name?
Central Perk.
Tributes to the actor James Michael Tyler as the cast of Friends say goodbye to Gunther.
This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Lucrezia Millarini.
Good afternoon. The government has pledged another £5.9 billion to clear the NHS backlog. The announcement ahead of the Chancellor's budget on Wednesday comes as waiting times in England are at an all-time high. Well, ministers say the money will go towards improving services and be spent on things like new scanners, beds and IT equipment. And while healthcare providers welcome the extra cash, some say it won't be nearly enough to get the NHS back on track. Here's Shihab Khan.
Since the start of the pandemic, nearly all parts of the NHS have been under immense pressure. It has meant many who need non-COVID treatment have had to wait longer than usual. 25-year-old Sarah Lambert has endometriosis. She's had 2 surgeries but is waiting for a third. She's been told, despite being in pain, she could be waiting 18 months to get treatment and doesn't know when it will start.
I don't even have a date in mind. When you have a date, at least it's something to count the days down. Whereas at the moment, I'm just in, so-called purgatory. I'm just waiting. It's also the impact it has on your mental health, having to cope with the fact that I can't behave like other 25-year-olds can.
In the budget this week, the NHS in England will get an extra £5.9 billion, which will be used to tackle the backlog of those waiting for tests and scans. The money will be used to pay for equipment and to fund more diagnostic tests. But is it enough to clear the backlog completely in this Parliament? The Health Secretary this morning couldn't commit to it.
I don't think anyone can make a guarantee on the backlog that it's going to be cleared or will fall by a certain amount. What we can be sure of is that the investment that we're making, today's announcement, alongside the extra £12 billion a year we've announced into sort of day-to-day spending by the NHS and social care, we announced that a few weeks ago. If you take all that together, it's really going to help, meaning millions more people will be seen.
There are currently a record 5.7 million people waiting to start NHS treatment in England. In a bid to tackle that, some of today's extra funding will go towards creating 66 diagnostic centres to speed up tests and scans. But at the same time, the health service has 93,000 vacancies across the country, which experts say needs to be resolved. Here at this GP surgery in London, they've been referring patients to hospitals for tests, scans and treatment, but say recruiting more staff is what's needed.
You can have as many scanners as you like and do as many investigations as you like, but unless there are people to treat those people and beds that they can stay in if they need any intervention, then this plan may not work.
The Chancellor will set out exactly where the extra money is coming from during Wednesday's budget. But with significant challenges facing the health service, the question will be whether this is enough. Shihab Khan, ITV News, Westminster.
Well, the government has just announced the national living wage is set to rise to £9.50 an hour. I'm joined now by our political editor, Robert Peston, who has all the details. So, Robert, what more can you tell us about this?
So, as you say, the government has now confirmed a story I put out earlier today, which is that the minimum wage that applies to everybody 23 and over is going to rise by 6.6% to £9.50. But I've also got some other really important figures. If you're age 21 and 22, the rate's actually going to go up by almost 10%, 9.8% to £9.18. And if you're an apprentice, and we're all clear we need many more apprentices in this country so that people can improve their skills, the rate is going up by 11.9% to £4.81. So these are very significant increases. They're going to be welcomed by people on lower pay. They are, of course, coming at a time when the cost of living is rising very sharply. Food prices going up, energy prices going up, petrol going up. So one note of caution that the rate these new higher rates are not going to actually take effect until next April. Now, a number of other important aspects of all of this. One is that, whether you think it's a coincidence or not, the reduction in the universal credit top-up was circa £1,000 a year for lower-income families. This increase in the minimum wage is almost exactly £1,000 before tax and national insurance. I understand the Low Pay Commission, in making this recommendation, took the UC cut into account. And then finally, one other point. Small businesses will say, many of them, they can't afford this rise. And we are living in a period of inflationary pressures. Bank of England in just a few days has to decide whether to put up interest rates. This could help the Bank of England decide to put up interest rates, which, of course, most people, including those on very low wages, would not like terribly much. OK, Robert, on the face of it, good news, but all those other factors to take into consideration. Thank you. As we mentioned, it is the budget this Wednesday. We'll have a special programme. Here's Tom with the details.
The cost of living has been rising. We've already had a slew of tax rises. Our national borrowing has been eye-watering. So just what can we expect this Wednesday as the Chancellor talks us through his budget? I'll have live coverage of the statement, and I'll be joined by our team of editors to make sense of what it means for you and the country. Do join me for the Chancellor's budget from 12:15 on Wednesday on ITV.
Well, next is lunchtime. The government is continuing for now to put its faith in vaccines to fight off rising COVID rates, resisting calls from health professionals to reintroduce some restrictions, including mandatory face coverings in some spaces. Well, this week, another 2 million people will be invited to have their booster jabs, and parents are being urged to get appointments booked for their 12 to 15-year-olds over half-term. This morning, the Health Secretary defended the decision not to reimpose restrictions at the moment.
It's true that the case numbers are still high, and we've all got to remain cautious. We've got to play our part, but we don't think the data supports moving to Plan B.
So the focus now remains on the vaccination push. Our health editor, Emily Morgan, sent this report from a vaccine hub in Peterborough.
Well, I've been at this vaccine centre for most of the morning. It's in a shopping centre in Peterborough, and the thing I've noticed most is the real steady stream of parents coming in with their children. That is exactly what the government wants. It's had a real drive to encourage parents to bring their teenage children in for vaccinations over half-term. Of course, there have been people coming in for their boosters too. The medical director says numbers of people coming in for boosters is pretty high here. The government is hoping that this vaccine programme will ensure they don't have to bring in further restrictions over the next couple of weeks. There have been calls for Plan B. Sajid Javid says that will not happen yet. The modelling that has been done and feeds into the government decision-making actually suggests that infection rates could go down over the next couple of weeks. I've spoken to one of the scientists who wrote the modelling. He said that because so many school children have contracted COVID over the last few weeks, the natural immunity amongst school children, who are the main drivers of infection rates, will mean that infection rates should go down over the next few weeks and months. Of course, that, coupled with the booster programme and the numbers of children getting vaccinated themselves, means that is possibly the case. The government is hoping that it will watch the data very closely over the next few weeks to see what is going to happen.
Emily Morgan there at a vaccine hub in Peterborough. Now, prices at the petrol pumps have reached an all-time high across the UK, according to new data. Diesel remains a little short of its previous record. It comes as global oil prices continue to climb. Well, Carrie Davis is live at a petrol station this lunchtime. Carrie, another blow for households and businesses, I suppose, already struggling.
Yeah, absolutely, Lucrezia. If someone brings an average-sized family car to fill up at the pumps today, it will cost them about £15 more than it did this time last year. And when you see the prices, well, that's no surprise. Let's take a look at what those average prices look like now. The average price of petrol across the UK is 142.94 pence a litre. That beats the former record by 0.46 pence. Diesel prices reached 146.5 pence a litre as of Sunday. Not quite the all-time high, but still high enough. Now, the recovery has been much more rapid than people expected. Of course, prices crashed during the pandemic. The Petrol Retailers Association puts that down to an increase in the price of crude oil, which they say has increased by more than 50% since the start of the year. The RAC agree that is a factor, but they also say retailers are bumping up the prices to try and claw back profits lost during lockdown, and that is a frustration for drivers.
They don't like it, would prefer it to be the same price, but what can you do?
To get an electric cab, I'd love to, but you just can't afford to do it. And when you do get one, there's nowhere to charge them anyway, so you're forced to use fuel.
Getting to the point now where it's getting, well, you can't really afford it anymore. It's getting to the point where everyone's paying a bit too much money for food.
And that's what charities that I've spoken to this morning who help people in financial difficulty say as well. People are having to make terrible choices when it comes to budgeting their households.
All right, Carrie, thank you. Still to come, the radio DJ leading a campaign to raise awareness of bowel cancer and...
Rachel!
Friends would not be the same without you. Co-stars pay tribute to James Michael Tyler. But first, a former Facebook employee turned whistleblower will be questioned about the company's approach to keeping children safe online by a committee of MPs and peers this afternoon. It's part of scrutiny of the draft online safety bill aimed at putting the duty of care on social media companies to protect users, or something Frances Haugen has accused Facebook of not doing in the past. Here's what she told a committee in the US Senate earlier this month.
The algorithms are very smart in the sense that they latch on to things that people want to continue to engage with. And unfortunately, in the case of teen girls and things like self-harm, they develop these feedback cycles where children are using Instagram as to self-soothe, but then are exposed to more and more content that makes them hate themselves.
Well, joining me now to talk more about this is social media expert Estelle Kieber. Estelle, thanks so much for joining us this lunchtime. It's interesting there what we heard from Frances Haugen talking about these algorithms, because you use them in what you do a lot, because you use them to encourage people to get more followers, don't you, on Instagram and Twitter. But what she's talking about is this more sinister side to them and how people, particularly young people, are targeted. Can you tell us more about how they work and what's the problem with them?
Okay, so the issue is with algorithms. A lot of things work with algorithms. It's just a system that, you know, in this case, shows you more of the content that you would like to see. So more of the content that you're engaging with. Now, the issue comes when young teenage girls are consuming content that's having a negative impact. Instagram and Facebook are not censoring this and stopping that content from being shared, which, like Frances said, is just then it leads into a really vicious cycle of self-harm, because the more of the images that they see, the more depressed they become, the more that they then turn to social media to, you know, find that crutch. And again, it's just that vicious circle that just continues to go round and round.
Estelle, we've heard from Facebook, I mean, their boss, if you like, the CEO, Mark Zuckerberg, saying, you know, when it comes to young people's health or well-being, every negative experience matters. We've worked for years on industry-leading efforts to help people in these moments. I'm proud of the work we've done. We constantly use our research to improve the work further. But there is this real shift, isn't there, that if the social media companies aren't doing enough yet, what can parents do to safeguard their own children?
I don't think it's down to the parents in this, you know, in this situation. As a parent myself, I teach my children about online safety, about stranger danger. the issue here is the dangers are right there in front of our faces. How many parents realise that letting their children use Instagram, which is a photo sharing app, who would realise that the impact could be so negative? I think it's time that the big companies, Mark Zuckerberg, actually face the fact that there is evidence there. They knew what this content was doing to young girls more than 2 years ago, and yet still they chose to ignore it because they were more bothered about the profits that those views were bringing in.
All right. Estelle Kuber, thank you very much for talking to us this lunchtime. Thank you. Now, radio presenter Adele Roberts has announced she's to have surgery for bowel cancer. The 42-year-old shared her diagnosis earlier this month. On Instagram, the breakfast show host said, "There's no easy way to do this, but I'm hoping it'll reach anyone who might benefit from seeing it or reading it. For a while now, I've been struggling with my digestion. I was sent for some examinations and checks. I was then diagnosed with bowel cancer." Well, joining me now is Emma Barber, who was diagnosed with stage 3 bowel cancer at the age of 28 in January, and Catherine Windsor from Bowel Cancer UK. Thanks so much, both of you, for joining me this lunchtime. Emma, let's start with you. Adele Roberts shares her story. She's only 42, but you were only 28. And in fact, doctors misdiagnosed you at first, didn't they? What happened?
Yeah, they did. So I was experiencing the symptoms last July. Well, obviously the symptoms that I know were bowel cancer that is now, around my son's first birthday. And I went to the doctors and they basically told me that I had hemorrhoids, piles. So, I was over the moon thinking, it's nothing serious. I was then sent away with cream. 3 weeks after using that cream, I then phoned the doctors again and said that the bleeding was still happening, but it was getting worse. I then got checked again by a different doctor at the time, and she told me that I had an anal fissure. So I thought, right, great, okay, I'll go away again. If I need tablets or cream, I'll try them. It was only then when I went on holiday in September with my partner and my little boy, I was going to the toilet at least 6 to 10 times a day. As soon as I was eating food, it was literally just coming straight out of me. My partner then told me, "Emma, this isn't right, you need to see your GP." So I went home, booked the GP, bearing in mind bowel cancer was in my family history. My granddad had bowel cancer and my uncle is still receiving treatment for bowel cancer himself. She didn't refer me. It took 6 months for me to be referred for a colonoscopy, and that was in January this year.
But Emma, you did get referred and you were diagnosed and you're having treatment now. How's it going for you?
My treatment actually finished in March. I had 5 weeks of intense chemoradiotherapy. So my treatment finished on March the 26th. I rang that bell, as you could see on the video. And I had my surgery on June the 16th, where I have a permanent colostomy bag.
Mm-hmm. Listen, thank you for the moment, Emma. But Catherine, hearing from Emma there and Adele Roberts also sharing her story, it's really important, isn't it, that people do talk about this. And as with any cancer, early diagnosis is key, isn't it?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, we've heard beautifully there from Emma, and also Adele has said it way better than I could. Getting in front of a GP and really pushing, being prepared to talk about your symptoms, keeping a record of your symptoms over a few weeks, and really just not taking no for an answer is absolutely key when you're the patient. And also it's really important that GPs and their staff teams also understand that you can get bowel cancer as a younger person.
And that's sadly, what I was surprised to hear. Sorry to interrupt you. I was very surprised to hear that Emma was only 28. I think a lot of people watching will be. But you know what? When you hear about bowel cancer as well, people still have that element of embarrassment about it, don't they? And they shouldn't.
Absolutely not. It's poo. We should all be prepared to talk about it. We all do it, and therefore any change in your habit, any blood in your poo, any unexpected weight loss or any pain in your tummy should absolutely just be in the back of your mind thinking, keep an eye on this, because I might need to go see
Catherine,
my GP.
Thank you. Emma, I'm sorry to interrupt. Catherine, Emma, we've got 5-10 seconds. Your quick word of advice for anyone worried out there now.
For anybody that's worried with bowel cancer or any symptoms, please go and see your GP. If that GP is telling you that there's nothing wrong, just be persistent, keep seeing different GPs, because like you've said, bowel cancer is not an old man's disease. I'm 28, anyone can have it. So
Emma, Thank you so much for sharing your story, and we wish you the best as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Finally, tributes are being paid to the actor James Michael Tyler, who's died at the age of 59, known to millions as Gunter, manager of Central Perk on the hit TV show Friends. He campaigned to raise awareness of prostate cancer after his own diagnosis in 2018. Well, today his co-stars shared their memories of the man many describe as the seventh friend. Here's Sangeeta Kandola.
Oh, I'm just making a list of people's birthdays.
Oh, mine's December.
Yeah, whatever.
Gunther wasn't exactly their friend, but he was always there. Milling in the background, managing Central Perks, serving sarcastic one-liners alongside the coffee.
Bedankt voor de koffie, Gunther.
Je spreekt Nederlands.
Yeah, we're done.
Ezel.
For 10 years, the character offered picture-perfect comedy timing as he persistently pined after Rachel.
There's nobody to hug!
But the actor who made Gunther a great success, James Michael Tyler, died yesterday after being diagnosed with prostate cancer. His co-star Jennifer Aniston said Friends would not have been the same without you. Whilst Mac LeBlanc said, "We had a lot of laughs, buddy. R.I.P. my friend."
Specific prognosis, it's of course a stage 4.
Earlier this year, the actor revealed his
cancer.
diagnosis, bravely sharing his story and campaigning to help as many people as possible to test for prostate cancer.
My goal this past year is to help save at least one life.
Despite his diagnosis, he continued to perform whilst undergoing treatment, but he always came back to his friends, even appearing in the reunion show.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome James Michael Tyler.
Honestly, I could not have imagined just a better experience.
I just have to tell you, I loved you.
He never did get the girl, but his part in the show won him an army of fans, and for many, he was the seventh friend.
Oh, James Michael Tyler, who has died. And that is it this lunchtime. Bye-bye for now.